John, good to see you, and thanks for joining us today. Just how difficult is it to go back to school for kids who are the victims of bullying?
Yeah, it's quite horrendous. I think there are thousands of kids in Australia right now that are feeling sick to their stomach about tomorrow and having to go back to school. And we're not talking about the kids that just might get the odd name call. We're talking about vicious, relentless, never-ending attacks.
What advice do you have for a kid who's feeling anxious about returning to school?
Well, the first thing I'll say is you have to front up, and I think certainly when we start a school term and we start it on a short week, it's easy to get out of it and maybe say we'll go next week. Front up, be there, because that's when the relationships are made. You don't want to miss that. But if you are targeted by bullies, you need to keep a journal of that. You need to keep notes, dates and times, so that when you do have to talk to a teacher or a parent, you've got some facts behind you and they won't be able to dismiss it.
John Caldwell uses his past tragedies to teach really important lessons, making a name for himself as a world-renowned anti-bully campaigner. And this time next week, he could be Australian of the Year. Please welcome him. He joins us now on the panel, John Caldwell.
You've done such amazing stuff, though. Tell us a bit about your anti-bullying work.
I work along a number of different organisations, and I've tried to remain a little independent because in this space there's a big debate around whether it should be more preventative or whether we need stronger laws, and I believe we need all of it. I think you need to definitely get in from preschool. I work with students at preschool right through.
Preschool,
yeah.
Isn't that? It's just awful to think kids in preschool are being bullied.
It is, it's awful, but I think the preventative is quite amazing, and when you go to schools where they have programs in like a Better Buddies type program, the maturity of these children versus other schools is quite mind-blowing. So,
meeting you now, I would not expect you to have come from such a history of poverty that you talk about and great personal pain and losing your father, that sort of thing. What is it inside a person that has made you resilient?
I think everybody has it inside of them, and that's the key thing. And I get the number one question I get asked is, what was the turning point? How did I overcome it? And there was no magical moment at all. When I was 15, I had left school, I was homeless, and I absolutely considered suicide. There's nothing specific I can tell people that said, I'm better than this. It was just a feeling, and I thought I can overcome this, and I did, and then I worked really hard to overcome it. So I do believe everybody can, and I don't necessarily believe people need to be a victim of their circumstance.
If you are being bullied and you're in that kind of headspace, what can you do?
Yeah, you have to speak up, and that's the hardest thing. So one of the things I say is to keep a journal as well of dates and times and specifics. So when you go to a parent or a teacher and they say, oh, it's just schoolyard antics, and say, actually it's not. This is what's happened, this is how often it's happening. Suddenly you've got them paying attention. So
John Caldwell, you are just a delight and an inspiration.
Celebrating the Australian spirit, celebrating people that have done remarkable things.
It's the most prestigious award in Australia, there's no doubt about it.
Flying the flag for Victoria, Mr. John Caldwell.
And certainly something in my wildest dreams I never expected I would achieve.
John's impoverished childhood was dominated by abusive foster parents after his own violent and alcoholic father committed suicide in front of him. But it was overcoming years of bullying at school to take a stand against this epidemic himself, which John feels is his greatest achievement.
I'm not naive enough to think that I'm going to solve the world's bullying problem, but I do hope to make a significant generational change.
And so you were successful in business, and then came, I guess, this need to want to give back and educate people about what you went through. Is that how, as simply as it happened?
Yeah, I always thought success was about making money and buying the newest car, and I ended up with a lot of toys and something was still missing. So I started doing a little bit of work in this space, and I didn't know it was really what I needed, but it's become an absolute addiction, and it's taken a life of its own, and now I'm doing as much as I can for as many people as I can.
Got an extraordinary background, a tough upbringing. What happened?
So never a lot of security around, and there was also an awful amount of violence in family and also outside. So there was always brawls everywhere.
Domestic violence, you mean?
Domestic violence, and also, you know, with friends of my father, he would always be picking fights after he'd had a few drinks, and so we got to witness some things that I feel children should never have to see.
Like what?
The type of violence, and I spell it out really clearly in my book, and the type of violence, very graphical violence, heads going through windows, the types of things like that. But it's interesting talking about Australia Day and what that does mean to me. For many years, I hated the thought of Australia Day because I thought it was about boozing and barbecues and heads ending up through the window. But as you get older, you start to discover all the other things about Australia Day and about celebrating what it is to be Australian, and that those drunken brawl barbecues are in the minority.
How old are you now?
36.
What's your first memory in life?
It is a violent memory, actually. It was, and I had to collaborate with my older sister to make sure I was right on this memory, because it was from when I was 3 years old, and it was sitting in the back of a car and watching my father in the headlights pounding my mother's face into the bitumen. And we both remember it very, very clearly, so it's quite horrific.
How do you recover from that?
I don't think you ever recover from it. And I don't think it's the same as the bullying at school. I think I did spend a lot of years talking to kids saying how you overcome it and life gets so much better and you forget about it. And lately I've been telling them that's actually not the truth, because those things stick in the back of your mind. And, every time you walk into a party in a room, you doubt whether these people want you there or want to talk to you, or no matter how much success you've achieved. And it's the same with the violence. You never get over it. I think you learn to cope with it. I've been a little unpopular for my views on saying that I don't think you need to be a victim of your circumstances. And in this day and age particularly, I think there's the internet's there's enough information to show people what the right way to do things is. And people constantly ask me and search for who was my mentor or what was my magical turning point, because they don't want to believe that you can just make the difference on your own. And I do believe anyone, anywhere can actually choose to make a difference in their life.